Hello, welcome to a special program of Cotton. We have today with us Paranjay Guha Thakurta, and we are going to discuss the SEBI controversy, recent SEBI controversy with him. And he is a very eminent journalist and also a teacher. So I welcome you to my show. First thing, actually, uh, to, uh, I want to ask you a very simple question first now, so that our viewers can understand. Now, what is SEBI and what are its functions?
The Securities and Exchange Board of India is a regulatory authority that is responsible for the regulation of India's capital markets, financial markets. So, equity shares, debentures, any and every kind of financial market which is traded on stock exchanges like the National Stock Exchange, like the Bombay Stock Exchange, all of these are regulated by SEBI. SEBI is a quasi-judicial authority. It was originally a non-statutory organization, then it became a statutory organization set up by an act of parliament. So, if I may anticipate your next question, how does this affect ordinary people? Now, the number of people who have stocks and shares has gone up quite dramatically in the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, in India, there used to be, we have a population of 140 crore, and 5 years ago, there were just about 2 crore people who had some money invested in some shares or stocks or mutual funds. This number has since gone up 5 times. And it is not just those who buy and sell stocks and shares, even those who have provident funds, those who have retirement benefits, like, I mean, you could get pension, you can get gratuity. Now, a part of this amount is invested in the stock markets. So, what happens in the stock markets has an impact on at least 10 crore Indians and perhaps those who are dependent on them, etc. Now, this is SEBI's job to ensure that these markets function orderly and also to penalize those who violate the rules. And today there's a huge controversy because the lady who is heading the Securities and Exchange
We are
Board
coming to that. We are coming to that. So very good. So you have explained how actually what are the functionings, what are the functions of SEBI, and how does it affect the ordinary investors, and the number of ordinary investors are actually increasing day by day, and even the people who actually enjoy their provident fund and etc., actually their savings are also affected by are regulated by affected by the functioning of the financial market, which are regulated by SEBI. Now, coming to the next question, actually, in your article, that Free Press Journal article, which was published on 5th of September, you wrote in that article that never before the credibility of SEBI and its chairman, particularly its chairperson, credibility of the chairperson question like this. Now, why is her credibility is questioned never before?
Never before has the head of SEBI been questioned in this manner. What are the allegations? Broadly speaking, they are conflicts of interest. That means if you are doing something which conflicts with what you are in your official capacity and what you're doing in an unofficial capacity or a private capacity. Now, the role of SEBI has various people have criticized it over the last decades, but specifically, the first Hindenburg Research report, which is an American short seller, a New York based short seller, that came out in January of 2023. But another report by Hindenburg Research, which came out on the 10th of August, it has pointed out concrete examples of conflicts of interest. Now, the SEBI chairperson, in her individual capacity, together with her husband Dhaval Buch, as well as SEBI, in unsigned statements, have denied these allegations. We'll come to all those in greater detail. But what are these allegations? Two statements have been issued by Mrs. Madhavi Puri Buch and her husband, Mr. Dhaval Buch. One was on the 11th of August and another on the 13th of August. But in between, several developments have happened. The spokesperson of the Congress Party, spokespersons of the Congress Party, it's mainly Pawan Khera, though Praveen Chakravarti has also addressed a press conference. 4 press conferences have been addressed. The first press conference was on the 2nd of September. The next one was on the 6th of September, then came on the 10th of September, and another one on the 14th of September. And if Mr. Pawan Khera is to be believed, there are more disclosures that are going to take place in the coming days. They are saying that Mrs. Bush, did she disclose the investments that he made, what her husband's financial interests are, what the companies with which she has been associated, her former employers, including ICICI Bank. Did she disclose all this? The question is, to whom did she disclose it? Mrs. Madhavi Puri Buch was appointed as a whole-time member of the Securities and Exchange Board of India in April 2017, the 5th of April 2017. She was born on the 12th of January 1966. So you can calculate her age. 5 years later, she went on to head. She became the chairperson of SEBI in April 2022. Not only is she the first woman to hold that post, she is the first person who does not belong to the IAS, the Indian Administrative Service, to hold that post, and the first person who has a background in the private sector to hold that post. Now, there are many allegations that have been raised. She has responded to these allegations, but in my opinion, there are several questions that have not been answered. And these questions pertain not only to various entities like Mahindra and Mahindra, Walkhart, but most importantly, the Adani group of companies. And though the Supreme Court had set up a committee reposing faith in SEBI to conduct its investigations, today we are wondering what happened. Why did the Supreme Court repose so much faith in SEBI? And will it continue to repose faith in SEBI after all these disclosures have been made? And the question is, do we need a fresh investigation? I say yes. By the way, there have been alleged conflicts of interest even among one particular member of that Supreme Court appointed committee. I can explain each and every point of view in greater detail, but I'm trying to give you first the big picture. Yeah. Yes. So what has happened is, I believe you need an independent inquiry. The petitioners who had petitioned the Supreme Court of India said, appoint an independent committee, a special investigation team. The Supreme Court did not agree. One of the demands was ask the Central Bureau of Investigation, the CBI, to investigate the case once again. The Supreme Court did not go along with that view. The Supreme Court says, no, SEBI, you're capable of doing this. Now, with all these questions having been raised about SEBI and Mrs. Madhavi Puri Buch, I believe there's time for a fresh inquiry. The present government does not want a joint parliamentary committee, but I think it's required. How do you ensure independence? How do you ensure that the members of the committee and the person who heads this committee is truly independent? Because here you're going beyond one individual, her family, and a group of very, very important corporate groups and corporate conglomerates. You are talking about the credibility of the regulator of India's financial markets. And if people lose their faith in SEBI, it's going to affect India's economy, not just domestic investors, foreign investors. Why should they invest in this country if they are not sure that the regulatory authority is acting in a fair, in an impartial, in an objective manner? Now, this is the big picture. If you ask me specific questions, I will answer them for you.
Now the question is that when you have raised this, when you have actually explained this thing, the outline, but then in your article you also say that okay, when the first question was raised in the Hindenburg report, she responded to that, and after that there was silence on her part.
No, she just responded again on the 13th. But she's talked about her educational qualifications. St. Stephen's College. I also studied in St. Stephen's College. Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad. I taught
You taught
as a
that.
as a visiting faculty member for
Yeah.
19 consecutive years. ICICI Bank, various other institutions. Her husband was in the Indian Institute of Technology in Delhi. He worked with Hindustan Unilever. Then he is a consultant with Blackstone. He has also worked with
But but
Mahindra
but
and
but, but
Mahindra.
my
The
question.
point, sir, the point is, do these education? I mean, she has in her rejoinder talked a lot about her educational
But
qualifications. She said,
how are they related to it? So
precisely,
how are they
precisely.
related? So what we need is that the SEBI should actually be above board. It functioning should be transparent. They should it as a regulator. If people question the credibility of the regulator, then how the regulator is going to question the malfunctioning of the financial actually organization, the business entities? That's the bigger question.
Correct. Correct. Now, let me quickly give you some of the allegations. Okay. Now, if you look at a period over the years, you can say that Mrs. Madhavi Puri Buch, in the 13-year period between 1998 and 2011, she earned an average salary from the ICICI Bank and group companies like ICICI Securities and ICICI Prudential. Average was about 1.3 crores per annum. But her retirement benefits was much higher. And in this 13-year period, her total salary was around almost 20 crore, but her retirement benefits were nearly 30 crore. These are facts. Why this is so? We can talk about it, including the issue of the employee stock option program and the circumstances under which she was allowed to exercise those shares. Now, the point is that all these questions have raised doubts, and she has made certain claims about a particular company, an Indian company called Agora Advisory Private Limited, in which she is a 99% shareholder. Now, this particular company has made consultancy payments to her husband, Dhaval Buch, Then there are other groups like Mahindra and Mahindra, Dr. Reddy's, Pidilite, they've also paid money. So the question is, if these companies have been investigated by SEBI, is this not a violation of SEBI's own code of conduct on conflict of interest? You see, she says, I've disclosed everything. But if you believe scroll.in, they quoted a whole-time member of SEBI, unnamed person, who said, we didn't know. We only got to know after Hindenburg brought out this research, the Hindenburg research brought out this report on the 10th of August.
That
Now,
means these were not disclosed earlier.
I don't know. I honestly don't know. Paresh, Babu, I don't know. You see, the point is, the payments that were made, how can the dormant company make personal payment? This is one of the questions. Pawan Khera has alleged that between 2017 and 2013, while she was a whole-time member of the Securities and Exchange Board of India and then became its chairperson, she traded in listed securities of companies. That means the stocks and shares and other financial instruments of companies that are listed on the stock exchange to the tune of almost 37 crore, 36.9 crore. Now, Pawan Khera draws the example of Mr. Damodaran, who was also an IAS officer, he was an IAS officer who headed SEBI. And when he joined SEBI, he returned 50 shares that he had with the State Bank of India. Now, that's not all. This Agora, there is another Agora, and that is a Singapore company, Agora Partners Pte. Singapore. And she was involved with that particular company too. Now, this company has invested money in various funds which have a very close association with China. And all this was happening when there were tensions between India and China in Ladakh. Let's go further. Now, what is happening is that we don't know what was the retirement benefits. What did she resign? Did she go on long leave? Did she superannuate? We are not known. But the way the benefits she got is not uniform in terms of both frequency and amounts. Now, the question that people are raising, and this I think is a very, very important question, is during the time she, after she left, resigned from the ICICI Bank, she was the director and CEO of ICICI Securities, which was a wholly owned subsidiary of ICICI Bank. She moved to Singapore as a private citizen. And she set up the Singapore operations of a United Kingdom-based equity fund called Greater Pacific Capital. She was a director of that company. Now, this is the same entity with which Shaurya Doval, the son of the National Security Advisor Ajit Doval, is also associated. So, a person known to me, he's an activist, he's an investor. She said she not only had the know-how, she also knows the know-who. So Arun Agarwal, based in Bangalore, she said she had know-how and know-who. So what we are seeing is so many transactions and so many questions that are not answered. Let me give you one more example, and then I can give you at least 3 or 4 more examples, if you will be patient with me. Anil Ahuja, a close childhood friend of Mr. Dhaval Butch, husband of Mrs. Madhavi Puri Butch, on his advice, they invested in a particular offshore fund. Now, Gautam Adani's older brother, Vinod Adani, has also invested in the same fund. Mr. Anil Ahuja is not just was the chief investment officer of this fund, he was also an independent director of Adani Enterprises till the 31st of May 2019. In her first, in Mrs. Madhavi Puri Buch and Dhaval Buch's first rejoinder, this point is not mentioned that their childhood friend, Mr. Anil Ahuja, happened to be an independent director of Adani Enterprises. Let's move quickly forward, and I'll give you two or three examples, and then you can ask me any other points. You see, this was pointed out even by the Supreme Court appointed committee. The Supreme Court appointed committee had as its member Mr. K.V. Kamath, who was heading ICICI Bank. At least two of his proteges have become very controversial. One is Mrs. Chanda Kochar, and the other is Mrs. Madhavi Puri Buch. Several allegations have been leveled. Mr. Kamath, should he have been a member of that committee, because it was looking into how SEBI, headed by Mrs. Buch, was investigating into the Adani Group companies. Now, this is a question that only the Supreme Court can answer. Only the Chief Justice of India, Mr. Chandrachud, can answer. Let's move very quickly. What the Supreme Court committee has pointed out is that its order came out in January 2024, that there are rules which is called the SEBI Foreign Portfolio Investors Regulations of 2014. These were changed in 2018. These were again changed in 2019. And this pertains to who is the ultimate beneficial owner. You see, these offshore entities in tax havens like Mauritius and Cyprus, they have several layers. Company A, company B, C, D, E, F. So you want to find out who is the real owner, the ultimate beneficial owner. Now, why is this important? If the ultimate beneficial owner belongs to the promoters and the promoters group, and if their shares are sold in the market, the promoters group, as per SEBI's guidelines, cannot hold more than 75%. But if a particular entity, the rules have been changed, and you don't know whether that entity is part of the promoters group, and this is what the Supreme Court appointed expert committee said, this is a journey without end. This is a chicken and egg situation. Let's move further. There was another set of rules by SEBI, which has got a convoluted name. It's called SEBI Listing Obligations and Disclosure Requirements Regulations of 2015. And in 2018, again, these rules were amended. This is called a related party. A related party transactions. You have to disclose. If you are having a transaction with your brother, your wife, your sister, you should disclose it.
No. I just
Should you disclose if you are having a business association with your brother-in-law? So, this is essentially what has happened. And if you give me just 1 minute, I will finish right now. After the Hindenburg research report came out in January 2023, on the 3rd of March, the Supreme Court directed SEBI to quickly conclude in 2 months' time in its investigations into 24 allegations against Adani Group companies. It has not completed its job. It's yet to complete the last of the investigation. Why is it taking such a long time is a question I don't know. And what are the reasons why it has taken such a long time is another story. So the short point is, after all these recommendations, we have to think hard what needs to be done, how Madhavi Puri Buch and the role of SEBI has to be scrutinized and examined. In January 2024, SEBI had completed 20 out of the 24 investigations. One more was completed in March 2024, and one is supposed to be very close to completion. So the question I now have, and this is for all your viewers, has the government got more to hide? Is that the reason why an impartial inquiry is not taking place? Who appointed Mrs. Madhavi Puri Buch? Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Home Minister Amit Shah. the Appointments Committee of the Cabinet, which is, though it is an autonomous, independent body, it is administratively comes within the ambit of the Ministry of Finance. We haven't heard from them. We haven't heard from Mr. Modi, from Mr. Amit Shah, from Mrs. Nirmala Sitaraman or anybody. So more and more doubts and more questions are being raised.
Now my question is, now see, I have not even been able to follow up all these things very carefully because it is becoming very messy. It's becoming the functioning of the SEBI, particularly the head of the SEBI, and her involvement with various, you see, financial entities, corporates. This is all becoming very messy, and it comes out from whatever I have heard from you. It comes out very clearly that she is involved, and her family, her husband, they are involved in various things actually which they're supposed to regulate. But how can, if
Absolutely.
they,
Absolutely. Now she's saying, I have recused myself. There is no conflict of interest. I have disclosed everything. Who has she disclosed to? We don't know. When did she disclose? We don't know.
no, that
Okay.
is what
Let
that is
let us assume that she's right. The government knows everything. ICICI Bank knows everything. Ministry of Finance knows everything. The question would that arise? If you know everything, do you seriously believe that she is acting in a manner that is above board, that is absolutely fair, absolutely in a manner there's no conflict of interest? Let me give you one small example. There is a company which has taken on rent a property that is owned by Mrs. Butch and her husband. Now, that has been that on behalf of a well-known group called the Walk Hard Group, which is promoted by the Khorakiwalas. They are into pharmaceuticals, among other things. Now, she says there's nothing wrong. All right, there's nothing wrong. When Walk Hard was being investigated by SEBI, did she recuse herself? She says she has, but I don't know. We don't know the
the
details.
good question.
That is
Yeah,
why you need an independent inquiry. Who is telling the truth? Who is not telling the full truth? Who is telling
no,
a half truth? These are
no,
things. But
yeah,
what we know, Parish Babu, is that she comes from the private sector. She and her husband are very wealthy individuals. They are experts in the working of the stock markets. And she, who heads the organization, she herself says, I don't know everything. There are hundreds and thousands of cases, and many of them don't come all the way up to the chairperson. Okay, I accept all that. But she is heading an organization. It's an important organization which has to oversee the smooth functioning of the stock market. Because these questions are being raised, I'm not saying right, wrong, false, correct. Should she not resign? Should she not resign and say, check everything? I have, if I am clean and my conscience is clean and everything, should she
yeah,
not say
what
that?
what I have,
I
what
mean, you
no,
look at
no,
how Justice Ranjan Gogoi was criticized
yes.
in that sexual harassment case because he was supposed to be investigating allegations against himself. Now that goes against the basic principle of jurisprudence that you cannot be a judge in your own cause.
Yeah, no, that is the thing. The question is, here it has come very clearly, and she is actually involved with big financial entities. And it has, from whatever I have heard from you, it has come very clearly that it is a very clear case of conflict of interest, isn't it? It's a very
But
clear
she
case.
says no. I'm not saying it. She says no.
Yeah.
She issued one statement on the 11th and another statement, she and her husband together, on the 13th of September. The first was on the 11th
But
of.
then she might be another now we are actually sort of time also. Now first another question I have, Now these things that because she was appointed by a very high powered committee headed by the Prime Minister, and also Amit Shah was also the member of that committee, and there is and SEBI is under I think our finance department. Now, have we heard anything from them about these allegations, about these
No,
and as we
you know,
know that the major allegations in the Hindenburg research report were against Adani, and we all know the relationship of Adani and the present government. So is that the SEBI thing is also exposing it that okay this there is a nexus between these private entities, these corporate corporates, and the government, and that is why the Madhavi Puribus is actually she has not resigned, and the government is also not saying anything. I think this is my last question to
you know, Paresh Babu, the Hindenburg Research report has alleged that since the SEBI chairperson had stakes in what they call obscure offshore entities that are used by Adani and his relatives. And they have quoted documents provided by a whistleblower, and they have alleged that this is what they say. We had previously noted Adani's total confidence in continuing to operate without the risk of serious regulatory intervention, suggesting that this may be explained through Adani's relationship with SEBI chairperson Madhavi Butch. Now, they are saying we had not realized that the current SEBI chairperson and her husband had hidden stakes in the same offshore entities in Bermuda, in Mauritius, that were part of the same complex, what they say, nested structure that was used by Vinod Adani. And Vinod Adani is the older brother of Gautam Adani. We also know that Mrs. Boch met Mr. Gautam Adani once at the headquarters of SEBI on the 11th of August 2022 to discuss the open offer applications of cement companies. We know that through his older brother, Vinod Adani, through offshore transactions, the Adani Group in India was able to acquire the cement manufacturing assets of a Swiss multinational group called Holcim. And that virtually overnight resulted in the Adani Group becoming India's second largest cement manufacturing group after the Aditya Birla Group. We also know that there was a second meeting between Mrs. Butch and Mr. Gautam Adani on the 3rd of October 2022. The question is that what happened? What transpired? Did something transpire? This is really the questions that people are asking. And the longer the government keeps silent, and the longer it takes for not just the government, but the Supreme Court of India to reopen the investigation and find out who were the people. I mean, what is the full story? We are having allegations, counter allegations. She says, my character is being assassinated. She says, she and her husband are saying, these are wild, false, malicious allegations. But there are specific questions. And I've raised those questions because they are not being raised by me. They have been raised by spokespersons of the Congress party like Pavan Khera, like Praveen Chakravarti. Now, people are naturally going to ask further questions as because if the government does not give you answers, people are going to wonder. So I am here suggesting that she should resign and there should be an impartial investigation. And whether that will happen or not, honestly, I don't know. But the longer this kind of a the government remains silent and the spokespersons keep quiet, the more people will
We we
suspect and speculate and
yes,
suspect and speculate
yeah.
that she has
So yeah.
been not
So
acting in a fair manner vis-a-vis Adani Group and others, other corporate groups.
no, you have actually there are many revealing things you have said in this interview, and
Uh, Paresh Babu, all of this is in the public
yeah,
domain.
yeah. So that
I'm just
you are
collating
just
points of
you're
India.
you are presenting these things for my viewers, but the thing is that okay, unless there is an independent impartial investigation and unless the chairperson she does not actually resign from her present position, then we shall not be an independent and impartial investigation would not be possible. So right at the moment what you have also said, that right at the moment the most important thing is that she should resign, and these things should be investigated by a special investigating team. Isn't it? Isn't that
No,
the
it could be a special investigation team appointed by the Supreme Court of India. It could be a joint parliamentary committee with various members coming from different political parties. Even the Central Bureau of Investigation, but you know how the CBI works. But the
but
short
then
point is
there should be an
there must
investigation.
be a probe.
And
That's
invest.
correct.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So thank you very much for sharing these things, particularly putting the things in order and presenting them so that viewers can understand this. Thank you very much for
Thank you
being
very
with
much.
us. Okay.